not a criteria for working at Shure that you have to be called Stuart. It just worked out that way.
Yeah, although we're working on, we are the stereo Stuarts, so we're going to work on 5.1 Stuarts next year. Not sure how that's going to work out, if anyone's got any ideas. So yeah, without further ado, we're here to talk about the DCA901, what we've introduced to the market, launched at IBC. I'm sure there's going to be hopefully some questions. But before we start, I want to give you a little bit of background, a little bit of storytelling. That's what we like to do. That's when we get into these events. And as we say here, it sounds often the unsung hero of storytelling. With the Audio Summit. It shapes emotions, it focuses attention, and it makes narratives memorable. One of our colleagues who works in the live sound industry, a very famous rental partner of ours who does a lot of live events, said the audio is the most crucial thing. No one goes home humming the lights. So yeah, just to roll back and how we got to where we are today. It was fundamental for us to understand how broadcast, how audio capture's changed over the years. And I guess some of these are a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but linear TV dominated the airwaves, certainly when I was a lot younger. Missed the 98 World Cup final, hope you taped it. Anyone can remember what the score was? It was a big one, France 3-0 against Brazil. Blockbuster to rent movies. Blockbuster, people used to queue up to rent the huge films of the day. We raced to the bathroom. No one wanted, during the commercial breaks, to miss that. No one wanted to miss that. End of Friends. And now we scroll past masterpieces on streaming platforms because the thumbnail gives us weird vibes. And sports broadcasts were events, probably something that doesn't remain linear at the moment. My son knows exactly when every single Coventry game is on and where it's going to be broadcast. But now he also expects it on demand. He expects to be able to catch up with everything at the click of a button and on multiple screens. And we also have to understand how broadcast workflows have changed over the years. We've talked about a lot of these already. Carl and Nuno already spoke about these. Truck broadcast, cloud-based productions. Remote integration, a lot of the workflow has changed over the years. And again, a big one at the moment, DCC, direct-to-consumer production, where teams want to own more of the content they're creating. And the fans have become a big part of it too. As I said sort of earlier, my son is a huge Coventry City fan, who are doing quite well at the moment. And the audio is now central to that immersion as well. There's distinct mixes required, alternate mixes required, second screen experiences, as we've spoken about. And we have one capture point, but we're sending that out to many, many destinations. And traditionally, we've brought the game to the fans, but now we're bringing the fans into the game, and they're becoming part of that experience. So to any A1s in the room, does this sound familiar? I'm responsible for more channels, more systems, more expectations. But I've got less time, fewer hands. I had to read this twice when I heard this quote. I didn't understand the fewer hands. I was like, is that a secret that A1s have? I realized that meant more people. But zero room for error. These events only happen once, and we have to capture them as they happen. So this is our solution, DCA, Digital Capture Architecture, what we've been developing over a number of years. And to sort of carry on the theme of the story, here's a little bit of the story of Shure for those who may or may not know it. So 1925, which, yes, does make us look 100, probably me so more than the younger Stuart, started in Chicago by Mr. Sidney Shaw back in 1925. Back then, we were a distributor of AM radio parts, alongside a lot of other home products as well at the time. We were basically the Argos of the time. But there was one product that intrigued Mr. Shaw more than anything, and that was microphones. He employed a lot of great engineers at the time, and the story sort of developed from there. The microphones came to the fore. We started developing our very first microphones in the 30s. So this is a little bit of a timeline of the array technology. And as I get into this, I had a really good question before from Gabrielle. I hope he's still here. Yeah, thank you very much. That was good. The story actually starts back in 1938, but I'm going to go back one more year before that. So Mr. Shaw started the company in 1925. In 1937, he employed a engineer called Benjamin Bauer, who we can see there. These are actual notebooks that our Shure historian has gathered for us to talk about the array technology that we are today. So in 1937, Benjamin Bauer was responsible for the uniphase principle. And for those of you who don't know what it is, that was the principle on which all dynamic, directional, single element microphones are based on. He was the person responsible to bringing that to the fore. Then obviously later on, we introduced things like the SH55, the classic Elvis mic. Microphones became smaller. And then 1 year later after that, after we'd gone into production with those single element microphones, he started work on what you can see down there in the left-hand corner. That is the array element, of which, based upon those microphone elements, which creates the array, the different lobes that you're allowed to, that we can capture using the array technology. A couple of notes on there. The super directional beam type microphone follows on from the previous discussion, as you can see there. That was in 1938. But roll forward all the way to 2001, when we start beginning work on these arrays. And to your question before, Gabriel, you asked, why now? Why is it why now? Manufacturing, technology, it has changed. At the time, Mr. Bauer and Mr. Shure understood that we couldn't make that array element without it being huge. They said there will be a time as technology improves, manufacturing improves, MEMS becomes more to the fore, that we'll be able to produce this technology. So hence, this is where we started in 2001. And that was the very early advanced development of the array. We actually launched the first product in 2016, the MXA. This started to ship. We had a tabletop device. We still do have a tabletop device. And we also had a ceiling array microphone. And this was designed for conferencing rooms, spaces where we could control the environment, enclosed spaces where we're just picking up, I guess, just vocals at this point, just speech, in order to transmit that over for video conferencing. So nothing in terms of like huge dynamic range or areas where noisy environments. And then roll forward to 2020, we start to ship the linear arrays, the MXA 710s. So that's kind of where the story begins. And how does that tie into what we do now in broadcast? Well, current microphones, as we know, being a microphone manufacturer, they're limited in reach, flexibility, and the technology is being commoditized. So, we make lavs. We know our colleagues elsewhere also make lavs, shotguns as well. And I think Carl mentioned this before. Microphones are generally good in what they do. I don't think anyone really makes a bad microphone, no one makes a bad speaker. But array microphones deliver advanced capture. We can do a lot more with them. Better reach. We can reduce the footprint. Gives us more channels, allows us to do things like flexible steering, take control, and gives us actually better sound quality. So this is where we introduce the DCA901. So this is our first true digital array broadcast microphone, based on everything that we've done previously. So it wasn't a flash in the pan. We've been developing this technology over a number of years. Digital steerable lobes that give us precise sound capture, automation, and gives us flexibility across a wide range of formats. And I'm not going to go through all this, but this kind of highlights the differences between where we get from shotguns, parabolics, to where we are with arrays. There's still places in the world for all these things. We just wanted to provide a solution in addition to what's already out there. So as I said, we've got DSP is also a big factor of where we get to as well. What you see in the DCA, hopefully later on when Stuart will take you through some of the use cases, is we have the DSP baked into that unit as well. It's low profile, minimal presence. We can steer without repositioning. We don't require anyone to get courtside, pitch side, in case an angry manager may have kicked over a shotgun microphone. We also have built-in stereo and 5.1 capture as well. And these are just some of the benefits. If anyone's had a chance to come and have a look, please feel free to come ask us some questions later. Increased channel density. So we've got few endpoints to set and strike. Again, that rigging time becomes much more improved, less cables to run. I mean, we're talking about network cables, RJ45 connectors, and we get improved capture coverage off the back of it. The DSP allows us to give you things like automix. So if you want a very, very quick setup, we can then use the automix Dante feed out of it. You've also got individual control over all those channels as well. And we can adjust the mics remotely. Better control, better management, speeding up rig times. So hopefully, going back to our DCA with his many or her many hands, this will give us the tools to get back to what everyone wants to be creative, to get back to providing the best audio we can do for that audience experience. And at this point, I shall hand over to my colleague, Mr. Stevens.
So you're probably thinking, the storytelling's great, but who's actually been using them in the real world? And thankfully, as a manufacturer, we have some good relationships with some broadcast A1s. Nobody wants to be the very first guinea pig throwing this out on a live production, so we had many guinea pigs on non-live productions first. So things like live studio voice capture, live action capture, alternate feeds. A lot of these use cases at the moment, being a Chicago-based company, are US-based use cases. If anybody wants to help us expand that in Europe, we're over there, get in touch. We're always looking for new opportunities. The first one then was baseball. So the goal here is to capture the action on the baseball field. You want to hear, when somebody hits a home run out of the park, you want to hear the crack of the ball hitting the bat. If someone throws from outfield to third base to get someone out, you want to hear the thump as the ball hits the glove. And you want to capture that slide as someone's sliding into home. Every baseball field is different. In Chicago, we have two baseball teams. We've got the White Sox and the Cubs. They're all slightly different in where you can position mics, but the goal is we want to get coverage of those individual base positions. We can use the width of these individual lobes to capture things like the pitcher's mound to get that level of detail. And the thing I want to draw your attention to is these two statements really. Is one of the A1s said the sound that he was getting out of the DCA was a more natural replication of the ball hitting the bat for him. And also, if he was able to get sounds that good with 1 hour of setup, if he had much more time, he would definitely like to see the potential. So that was the application with baseball. We've also done some work with football. There's a US-based company out of California called Edge Sound Research. They have a platform called the Virtual Sound Engine. And in I guess the predecessor to this, or the precursor, we're used to using the microphones to trigger camera follow. Whereas with the DCA, what we're using with the Virtual Sound Engine is they have positional tracking data, and we're using that tracking data in tandem with the DCA to make gating decisions on the microphones. So as a player makes a break up the wing, we can track that individual player, we can track the ref, we can track the ball using the Edge Sound Research software, and we can use that to activate the mics as they're running up and down the football pitch. Again, all these mix down to either a mono or stereo mix. So from a mix engineer, it's a greater reduction in channels that he's having to mix to track that data as they move up and down the pitch. Basketball, again, another US one. Two microphones traditionally captured with shotgun mics around the basketball court, and then additional lavalier mics up in the nets to capture the swoosh. In addition to the lavs in the baskets, we positioned two DCAs under the stanchion, simply fanned out to capture things like the free throw line directly under the baskets, fanned out across the three-point line as well. But then we also had one of the conferencing mics, the MXA920, mounted under the Jumbotron. Jumbotron's a bit trickier to get to. It's much harder to install a mic on a Jumbotron on a game day, but this was essentially the setup that we were able to achieve with just 3 microphones covering all the action across a court, all over 3 network cables providing PoE and audio for all of those. Similar with boxing, simply mounting the DCA above the ring, we were able to set up individual capture zones so that you now get the thump of someone taking a punch to the kidneys or gut. But in addition to that, we were able to deploy some of our linear arrays within each of the corners. So you get that up-close kind of corner man dialogue as well that can all contribute to the additional mix and those alternate effects channels that can feed into the broadcast mix. And then lastly, things like broadcast studios. So having it as either a backup mic, using it for audience capture, things like we did Latin Grammys recently as an ambient capture for audience during that performance. It's just another alternative. these are the use cases we have so far. Everything with an asterisk indicates current testing, but this is not an exhaustive list. There are other opportunities that we're seeking. I've even had someone say things like Pokemon. He does a Pokemon card tournament. He wants to capture the sound of cards being shuffled and thrown down on the deck. And he's really keen on testing that out. It's an application that we hadn't considered. Competitive Pokemon. Netball is another one that we've recently tested on. An interesting one as well. I was at IBC. I had to explain to one of my US colleagues what netball was, because he was like, I was like, it's basketball, but you can't move once you've got the ball. But, and yeah, anything else, like I said, we're always looking for new use cases. We know that this is new technology. We're creatures of habit. We want to stick with what is the tried and tested solutions. But the key takeaway that I want to say for this is, the thing we started with DCA is it's just about reimagining those workflows. It's giving everybody greater flexibility and the ability to work more efficiently in terms of how they set up and how they deploy and capture the audio for these events, so that ultimately everyone can get back to what they want to do best, which is just concentrate on mixing a show. And with that, we should leave into a little 2-minute
Switching to the DCA901, 2 arrays could cover the whole NBA floor, whereas I would have 12 mics plus to try to capture the same thing. It was unbelievable.
First time I heard the DCA901, I was a bit terrified that it was able to capture what it was capturing, but it's also exciting at the same time. It's really going to kind of change how we approach what we're doing.
The DCA901 is ultimate control.
It's the short version.
That is the short version. And that's us. Well under. Questions? We're all about improving efficiency.
Any questions for the
There was
Stuarts?
one at the back.
Oh, I've got it.
Sorry, I always got one. You talk about the remote control. Can you do that as a full REMI? So can you remote control it from hundreds of kilometers away? Does some of the control need to be local? Is there any limitations on latency?
The user interface for the microphone is embedded on the microphone. So if you can facilitate a network link to that microphone, you can control it from anywhere.
Cool.
Question over there.
Ghost hand at the back.
The control, is it to integrate multiple microphones, or can you, I think that's what you implied. I just wanted to get a better understanding of that for different applications.
At the moment, each microphone is its own individual interface. So there are things like each device has its own individual, 10 individual presets. So if you are setting up multiple microphones, as in that kind of NBA scenario, you could configure one preset for one stanchion, simply put it on a USB, send it over to the tech setting up the other one, and just deploy that same preset. So 10 presets stored locally on the device, but unlimited presets depending on your cloud storage. They're very, very small files.
Cool. And you mentioned 5.1, but if you wanted to do like an Atmos, array type, 5.1.4, would you need 2, or can you do that in one microphone?
There's presets already baked in to do 5.1. I guess the question about doing any more would be something we could look into. I would also...
Got a use case?
Yeah.
Contact us. We'll do some tests with you.
Good.
Okay, last question.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't get the chance to ask you about technical question. Maybe it's inconvenient right now. So I suppose the output is going to be Dante, A67, same things, but A67 real A67, or the A67 that Dante gives to...
AS67 that Dante gives you.
Yeah.
A67 what?
That Dante gives you. So
right.
native Dante, AS67 through... I believe it's Dante Domain Manager. You have to...
So, as I know that guy of the coherence, is deterministic the time delay that offers this fabulous microphone?
Individual outputs, I believe, is about 13.5 milliseconds.
But always the same?
Always the same.
Perfect.
Stereo mix is
Perfect.
about 21.5 milliseconds.
Perfect. And finally, the control for the management, it could be in band or has to be in another networking?
Good question.
Yeah, I think we'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I believe it's all carried over the same
Yeah.
IP, so we don't do split network traffic on that one.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much, the Stuarts.
There we go.
Thank you.
Give them a round of applause.